The What to Next podcast helps you build a TBR of future favorite books. In each episode, Lori and Maine interviews authors and book influencers to recommend books they loved for you to pick up today. If you're an avid reader, always looking for your next great read, then the show. Hi, Brianna. Welcome to What to Next podcast.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here.
So happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I write psychological thrillers and historical fiction. I've been doing that for about 8 years. Before that, I was a journalist and I covered politics and policy in Washington, D.C., which was very exciting in my 20s. And then my 30s hit and I was like, I can't keep covering every single super deadline at Christmas Eve kind of thing. So I kind of shifted my interest into fiction, which is I've just really loved doing. So that's kind of my career background. I live in Asheville. I have a puppy named Jinx who is 1 year old and sleeping, so he's not going to disturb us.
There we go. So what was the transition like for you to move into fiction? And you have psychological thrillers, which are, there's twisting turns and you may have to plot it out. And then you have historical fiction that you have research. So there's a little bit added components of not just I'm going to write a book. Like there's more to the book process. So what was the transition like from being a journalist to writing fiction and then even just within your niche?
Yeah. So I was on the editorial side of journalism. I was doing like production and editing and all sorts of things, which I think really gave me a strong base to come into publishing, because I've heard time and again, like one of my strengths is like that I'm very editable. Like someone can give me a direction and I take it very well because I was an editor, and I've seen writers who get too attached to their own work and really push back. And it doesn't become a partnership. It becomes, a battle. And so I think that helped a lot with the foundation, but also just like you said, research is really important. Not only for the historical fiction, but I'm actually writing a thriller series right now that stars a linguist and like a forensic linguist. And I did not realize how hard linguistics was. And I'm doing like these research deep dives into like scientific journals and like trying to learn statistics. And it's just, but I do feel like having a journalism background and having that decade, then I was in college, it was my major. So it just kind of really created a foundation for that research that I need for fiction writing. I think I just love fiction writing so much because you can just create your own world. With journalism, you have to rely on so many other people, and I'm like a people pleaser. So if I like had a deadline or something and I had to rely on somebody else to get back to me, I just got really anxious. In fiction, you just get to create and rely on your own imagination.
I love it. Yeah, I think it's like it's allowing yourself to just have the freedom to work by yourself, and create the worlds and imagine them, and just maybe dig into this tangent and we're like, okay, well, like it's not going to affect me, in the long term, the day-to-day thing. And so with journalism, you probably have like all these other factors that are just take into account that you have to kind of like produce.
And there's so many people, especially if you're covering politics, who have like a very vested interest in what you're doing. And so you have to be super on top of it, which is, of course, fantastic because that's what journalists should do. They should be really on top of it. But there's that level of stress that I shed a little bit when I left journalism, which was good.
Yeah. So as we were chatting before we came on the air, you wrote your historical fiction is a very timely, book. It's the Library of Burned Books. So tell us the elevator pitch on this chat about a little bit about it. So
yeah. So the pulse point of the book is this woman named Viv, and she works for the Council of Books on Wartime, which is a real organization that existed. And I kind of gave all of the like little responsibilities to Viv, and so she became this fictionalized character, but she represents people who did exist. And Her husband just died. That's on the first page, so it's not a spoiler. And one of his last letters talked about the armed services editions, which were paperback books that were sent to soldiers to boost morale. And he loved it, and it was like the last thing he mentioned. And so she becomes like this champion for these books that are being attacked by a powerful senator who wants to censor them because he has a grudge against Roosevelt. So he wants to get political points, but he's kind of dressing it up as, protecting the taxpayer money from propaganda, political propaganda. So she kind of goes to battle against this powerful senator. And as she does, she discovers these two women, and they have intersecting histories. But they were both in Berlin in 1933 during the book burnings. And one of them worked at a library that protects the books the Nazis wanted to burn, which is where the title came from. And so all of their fates kind of intertwine into a cinematic finale.
There we go. And so, as we can probably tell, if we look at the news, there's been a whole thing about banned books. I live in a state that is a big proponent of it, and it's been on the news for it. And so, what kind of similarities are you noticing from this time period, from like 1930s to where we are today, without going into politics, but just like there's some similarities here?
Yeah, there's definitely parallels, and you see echoes. One of my favorite sayings is that history might not rhyme, but the history might not repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme. And so I think, I started writing this book in 2020. And so we weren't really at the fever pitch we are right now. I hope this is as bad as it gets, but we weren't there yet. But you can just see it, like the drum beats of fascism are just really consistent. So once you start studying history, you can see the way that they try to control people who want to become authoritarianism or whatever, want to control the masses, essentially, the people who vote. And they do that through entertainment or information that's available. But I always think that books have a really specific angle, because they create empathy. And I don't know how many other entertainment mediums do it to quite the same extent, because you're inside your main character's head usually. And that really creates a unique empathy for other people, other cultures, other religions, all sorts of stuff. And so when you have that, you don't get to control the people who are, who are having this expanded worldview as well. And so to control that, you have to control what books they read. And so I think you're seeing the same thing there. I think another startling and important thing to point out is they also went after queer creators, books, research. There was an institute, one of the first institutes they raided for the 1933 book burnings was an institute that studied transgenderism, queerness, women, everything like that, decades ahead of its time. And they burn all that research. It's just gone. And so it just feels like that's where they would, it feels like they just continue to go after people who maybe are not in the majority of the population, who are a minority. Yeah. So an easy target. So I think you see those parallels as well right now.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see it and to be like, holy crap, this could be fiction, and this is reality, this is the reality we're today. And so I think it's important to look at books and their books gives us not only an escape, but they teach us about other people's experiences, identities, way of living, how they make choices, decision making, and different things. And I know they're blaming on pornography. I'm like, yeah, romance is pornography. I'm like, yeah, no, it tells you how to have a healthy relationship and how your sexuality, embracing it and all the different things. It's not, we're so puritanical.
I know. Well, and I do feel like there's an aspect to it where it's if someone is queer, their existence is sexualized, just being gay, lesbian, whatever, their existing is sexualized. And and they don't do that for, straight people who, but it happens all the time with babies wearing onesies that are a future heartbreaker. And I'm like, Like, how is that? I don't know. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy there, and
Yeah.
yeah, scary.
It's scary times. So we'll keep fighting the good fight, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Good
exactly.
news.
That's
Good
what I hope
news
people
is
kind of take away is just like
yeah.
fighting the good fight is kind of worth it sometimes. And
Yeah.
even if you don't win, it's still important. You know, it's still important to make sure that our voices are heard, and it's not
Yeah.
the minority that's the only voices that are heard.
Yeah, good news. I just saw in the news that Illinois passed. They're about to pass a bill that it allows not to ban books. Like they're in the
I saw
end.
that. I was so
And I
excited.
was like, yay! I lived in
Yeah.
Illinois for a couple of years. And I was like, yay, they're doing something. So,
Yeah.
you
No,
know,
I know. I feel like that's such like a low bar to be excited about, but at the time it is kind of exciting news.
it is. So switching gears, let's talk about the Gretchen White series because
Yeah.
it's the third book is coming out in a couple weeks. So tell us all about it.
Yeah. So I feel like I wasn't going to be emotional, but yeah, this is the third and right now final book for my series on Dr. Gretchen White, who is a sociopath, and she solves crimes as a sociopath. And the first one, the way that it came about is I really am interested in the psychopath kid trope. But I didn't really feel like I had anything to add to it. I think like there's a Aurora out there that is plentiful. But I did think that it would be cool, like to write if someone framed the psychopath kid, because then like of course everyone thinks it's them, and how do you get someone to listen and doubt that story, and so that's how Gretchen came about, because she's a sociopath, so she kind of sees herself in this like psychopath kid, and that started the series. And then she kind of has this background where she was involved in a murder when she was a young girl, and that's kind of haunted her for her whole life. So that second book, she solves that, and then the third one is she has this partner named Marconi, and I have people like begging me to like get them together, but Marconi is arrested for a murder that she didn't commit. So that's kind of the, or did she? I don't know. That she might not have committed.
I don't know. And these books are available on Kindle. Yeah.
Anyways, and so that's the third one. And I think it's funny because I everyone just like the feedback I gotten on it so much more than any of my other books is how much they just love the characters. And it's so funny because they're like, it's a lovable sociopath. And, you know, her and Marconi's relationship was really fun to write because, you know, they kind of fit and rub at the wrong, you know, they kind of like have their jagged edges kind of match. And so, yeah, it was really fun to write. I got to be like snarky and think about like, I want to kill this person because they're annoying me type inner monologue. So yeah.
I love this. And these books are available on Kindle Unlimited as a read and listen, which is exciting. So if you want to listen to it, you have Kindle Unlimited, you can also get the audiobook included in the whole shenanigan, you know.
Awesome. And I love the narrator for the Gretchen voice is great narrator.
Perfect. All right. So let's talk some book recommendations. But before we get that, we got to talk about Game Changer series by Rachel Reed because we both are huge fans of it.
Huge fans. Love you, Rachel Reed.
Yeah. So for those who haven't listened, you know, the Game Changer series is a male hockey romance. It's about 6 books in the series, but they follow different team members in different teams. So it's not like anything straight up. Each book has like a sequel. But they're not, you don't need to read the whole 6 books in the series, but you should because they're so good. So tell us like, what is your favorite couple, first of all, and then like, what do you love about the series and what brings you comfort by reading them?
So Shane and Ilya are my I feel bad because I feel like they like dominate everybody's favorite list. I follow her on Instagram and she was posting all of like the last year rounds up, and she's just, that couple is like on everybody's favorite list. So books 2 and 6, if you guys are interested. They're just so cute together. It's a rivals, and then they're kind of not hate sex, but rival sex. And then they become more than that and kind of navigating how to hide a relationship in professional hockey without, you know, destroying their careers. And I think there are just so many moments in there where I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
But I also really think she really tackles some deeper issues like anxiety and mental health, depression. I really like the book with the oh my God, I'm going to blank on his name. The big tough enforcer guy
Yeah.
and the singer.
Yes.
Fabian, but I don't remember. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking
I
on his
think
name.
it's Tough Guy. I think that's
It's
the
tough
one.
guy.
Yep.
And he's forced to kind of beat people up for a living as the like a defender of his hockey team. And he has like a mental breakdown about it. And I think she just handles all those issues really well. And it makes it more than it just gives it another layer that I find very just like comforting and lovely to read.
Yes. That series is like it has a very special place in my heart too. So
I know. And I think I reread my favorite ones like a couple of times. You know what I thought was really interesting is since we're chatting, is the one with the social media manager and
yes.
yes. And I felt like she handled that so well because one of the main characters has kind of internalized homophobia and the other one is out and proud and loud and just the way that he was kind of a villain and like not a villain, but he was not great. You didn't root for him in the previous books. Like he showed up every once in a while.
Yeah.
And then he got his own book. And I just like love the way that she navigated that. Like he wasn't perfect, but you ended up just like loving him anyways.
Yeah, I love that one because it was like I think we just saw a redeeming story, like a villain
Yeah.
redeeming itself.
Yeah.
You
And like a
know.
real redemption story. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
like it wasn't stuff that you're like, oh, well, that's just normal or like whatever. It was like legitimately he had caused harm and
Yeah.
pain. And then he went and did the work. And like you got
Yeah.
to see him doing the work. And I think that's really cool and like a unique kind of take on it.
Yeah, so the series is so good, and Rachel
Okay.
Reed is coming out with a standalone later on this year. We do have an interview with her from years before, so
Oh my
I'll
God.
post it on the show notes so you can hear her talk about the series, and how
Awesome. I'm gonna go listen to it.
and
Yay.
how we fangosh about Ilya and Shane. And we love every time Ilya shows up because Ilya does make it a cameo in many of the other books, which is so good. So
I love it. And like you get it. I love that she like put in pieces and then in the sixth book, like you saw it. Like you saw it in his happening, like with the plane. I won't give anything away, but
yeah.
the plane scare. Oh, I cry at that. I like tears.
It is so good. All right, so let's try some book recommendations. What kind of books do
Yeah.
you recommend our listeners to pick up other than The Game Changer, which they have to add it?
Well, go read that, and that will keep you busy for like
Yeah.
a week. I just finished. I think I answered differently earlier, but I just finished The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell, which was so fun. It was like a great bake-off clue type. They're in a manor, and someone dies, and that was really fun. I also just finished The House of Eve by Sadiqa Johnson. And that was beautiful. It came out in February. So these are all kind of recent. I like to keep up with like recent books as much as possible. But it was about two women in the 50s. They're Black women and young, and they get pregnant. And again, I'm trying to like navigate spoilers, but I don't think that's a spoiler. And just how hard it was. And I feel like talking about timeliness and how much Roe v. Wade has let us control our lives more. And now, I keep dragging us back to politics. Sorry, but
It is okay.
It's a good example of like how recent it was that a pregnancy is just going to derail a lot of plans and like the way that you live. So that was really timely. I also just finished The Lost English Girl. If you want a historical fiction rec, it was about the children who were evacuated from cities in England because they thought there were going to be like bombs dropped, which there were, of course. But all of the psychological ramifications that went into it, like they were like, yes, this is a good idea. Let's like ship the children to the country. But they weren't really thinking of like the mental health of like a 6-year-old who's like suddenly torn from the house, like their home for 6 years, 5 years. And so that was kind of an interesting aspect to a World War II setting.
Yeah. These are great recommendations.
Okay.
So thank you. So
Yeah.
Brianna, tell us where we can find you online.
So BriannaLabuskes.com will kind of have all the links that you need to socials and stuff. I have a unique name, so like Googling something close will usually get you to my website.
There we go. Thank you, Brianna, for being on the show.
Yeah, of course. This was so much fun.
If you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share with friends, subscribe, rate, and review the show. This is the easiest way to support the podcast. For a list of books mentioned and other romance recommendations, please visit whattoreadnextblog.com. Did you know you can purchase audiobooks directly from your favorite local bookstore? With Libro.fm, you can pick up more than 250,000 audiobooks, including bestsellers and recommendations from real booksellers. You'll get the same audiobooks at the same price as the largest audiobook company, you know the name, but you'll be part of a different story, one that supports your local community. If you're new to audiobooks, there's a perfect way to squeeze into more reading into your busy life. Listen with the free Libro.fm app while you do your chores, walk your dog, relax at home. The What to Read Next podcast has a special offer for our listeners. Get 2 audiobooks on Libro.fm for the price of 1 with your first month of membership. Use code What to Read Next. This offer is only valid for new members in Canada and the US. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.